All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Universal Mastery. So, today we have something that is very interesting that we're going to be going into. We are doing a reaction video where I'm going to be watching over someone else's content. The video is called The Unseen World and Demon Possession and Exorcism. And this is from an actual exorcist who is explaining some of his experiences dealing with demon possession. And he's also going to be speaking about it from a Judaic Christian lens. And I'm going to be kind of observing through this. I'm going to be sharing it with all of you. And I'm going to be interjecting at certain points that I feel like is going to be valuable to really kind of go over as we are watching over this video together. So I'm going to be doing a screen share. So if this is something that you are interested in learning a lot more about, I highly recommend that you stay tuned and I will see you on the other side. Okay, so we're back. Let's go ahead and do this screen share. I'm going to click the button here. All right, looks like we're live. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Has to be constantly aware that the invisible world is always active. We're extremely cautious with everything, including ourselves. We recognize that any thought or impulse we have may be from God, but it also may just be psychological from us, or it may be from the demons. And we have to recognize in all humility that we probably don't have the discernment to distinguish one from another.
Okay. That's a crazy belief system. So the impulses may come from natural human instincts, it may come from God, or it may come from demons. All right. That in itself sounds pretty stressful if we are going to adopt this belief system. And overall, what he's also saying is that humans don't even have the capacity to be able to tell. So overall, that's a belief system that I 100% do not fully resonate with. But this is absolutely something that a lot of people do resonate with and they sort of attach to. And in many ways, this can create a lot of unnecessary pain and stress in your life when you're not really understanding what's going on. Once again, demons are extraterrestrial entities that carry a negative polarized charge. They are literally the representation of the primordial yin, the primordial feminine of the universe. These entities require us to go into the deep portions of the unconscious. So, any of you that have studied Carl Jung's work, that is going to be the stuff that kind of teaches you about that negative polarity, doing deep shadow work, facing repressed emotions inside of the self, removing the mask that a lot of us wear as humans so that we can start healing through trauma. Okay. Subscribing to a belief system where demons are these evil creatures that are trying to harm us and hurt us, that is only going to create a separated view on ourselves and the connectedness of all things. So let's go ahead and continue.
Well, the great saints and elders have that discernment. When we don't have that discernment, we tend to be pretty distrustful of ourselves, which is why we go to our spiritual father. But we are ever aware of.
Notice how in Judaic belief system, it's always about the father. Okay. It's always the man, right? So there's a huge emphasis on the masculine, but a huge disregard and suppression of the feminine. All right. The reason why is once again, what are we talking about? The primordial feminine, which is the void. From darkness, there was light. From the primordial yin, there was the yang, right? Just like we are birthed through the womb, the mother, there's a energetic reality to that. So when it comes to a lot of Judaic belief systems, it tries to keep us away from that feminine polarity so that we don't understand that aspect of ourself, so that we separate from that inside of ourself. When in reality, we have a balance of both primordial yang and the primordial yin that works very well harmoniously together.
The demonic world around us. At the same time, we're not hyper focused on it. We don't become obsessed with it. We don't give more attention than it's due. And I think this is spiritually one of the dangers that people make, is that when they do have something happening in their spiritual life that they feel is demonic, sometimes if you begin to really worry about it and give it more focus than it's due, you actually strengthen it. For instance, people are sometimes surprised when they have what are their logis me? What are these random thoughts that comes up that's particularly kind of crazy? I'm driving down the road and out of the blue, I have a thought with my kids in the back of the car to jerk the wheel and careen my car off the road and kill us all. And, it's a fleeting thought. It's in and out. And I go, I've never had a thought like that before. What just happened? Well, if I give it hyper focus, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to strengthen it. I'm going to start worrying about it. I'm going to start giving it a power that it doesn't otherwise have. But if in those moments we can learn to say, put my thoughts right back on Christ and just say, Lord, I know that thought was crazy. That didn't come from me. Clearly didn't come from you. Banish those thoughts from me, and then go right back to your prayer life and your world of peace.
Oh, God. Okay, so that's going to be a great representation of spiritual bypassing. I get where he's coming from. I get his intentions are good, but that is going to be a form of spiritual bypassing. When you have a thought that says, I'm in the car, let's just drive the car off the road and kill everyone in the car, that is largely going to be rooted in some form of repressed emotion. Thoughts are driven by emotions in the body. So there clearly is a repressed negative emotion that is inside of the body of the person who has a thought like that. And it's important to acknowledge the thought, to observe it, and yes, let it pass through, not to banish it, not to have to change focus to get rid of it, but to acknowledge it for where it is, see the thought, and then connect to the emotion that is actually driving the thought. So, what does it feel like to have a thought like that? And if you actually were to do it, what is the feeling that starts to come up for you? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it guilt? Is it anger? Is it shame? Is it abandonment? Like, whatever feeling is underneath, that's the core. And that's how you actually work with it and integrate it. So, the whole idea of let's just replace it with something positive focused on Jesus Christ and hopefully banish that thought. That's never how you're actually going to properly integrate it. It's actually going to keep it further suppressed, and it's only going to build in its charge later on. And it's going to keep you in a position where you always have to keep your focus on something else. Okay. Continuing on.
Going to be better off. I teach people all the time. I tell them one of the greatest spiritual tools I can give them is called the holy shrug. And the holy shrug is to take something that has happened and just say, yeah, okay, and go back to normal life. Because otherwise you give it way more credit than it's due. And if the thought isn't helping you, then why are you giving it attention in the first place? Don't let it live rent free in your head. Go back to holy things and focus on those as much as possible. So the same
Go back to holy things. So I get, once again, I get his intention. He just wants to help. But in reality, that's not how you actually resolve it at its core. And to say just go back to holy things is demonizing that thought and the emotion that's driving the thought, which is actually a wounded part of self. So go back to holy things is inherently saying that that thought and that emotion that's driving it and that wounded part that's behind all of it too is not holy. So we're further demonizing this part of us, which is going to be really damaging to the nervous system. And it's going to create more fragmentation in the psyche. And it's only going to make these things get worse over time unless you are coping through religious means, which is what this form of practice is all about. Okay. Just needed to say that.
method is really the best. And that's to fight for Christ with your back to the demons rather than trying to fight directly against the demons with your back to Christ. Having said all of that, we do take the demonic very seriously. We're very cautious of it. And I've had experiences that have absolutely awakened me to not only how seriously we need to take the demonic, but also how much more power Christ has over the demonic.
What does demon possession mean? How do the Orthodox view, that concept?
Saint Silouan the Athonite, he gives a really clear explanation on this when he talks about how that possession really comes in different stages. When we hear the word possession, we tend to think of the Hollywood type of possession, where somebody has lost control of themselves because a demon is controlling them. This type of thing does happen. I know priests who have done exorcisms on people that were almost out of a Hollywood movie. I mean, literally, people levitated off the ground from demonic power. People speaking in languages they didn't know, and some really horrific things. But this is very rare. This is very rare. The demons much more so want to make us not aware of them. They will.
Okay. So demonic possession, the way that a lot of people understand it, is definitely highly influenced by the entertainment industry with different movies and TV shows and different things that we've all seen. Um, is that type of, possession, is that common? No, it's not common. It does happen. But even in that form of possession, that is not necessarily a demon that is possessing the body, which, once again, demon being an extraterrestrial, higher density consciousness that does not have a physical existence like us as humans. A demon is not necessarily driving the possession when someone is going through a very severe form of possession. A lot of the times, literally most of the times, what is driving a possession, especially an intense one, is literally fragmentation in the psyche and different forms of trying to keep it repressed that has traveled very deeply through the ancestorship line and has also been influenced by uh, spiritual religious means of repressing, which can be also repressed through certain forms of ritual in these religious practices. So, for example, every time you go to church, you do that ritual where you eat the bread, the flesh and blood of Christ to purify your body and to not have to face your sins, but give it up to Christ rather than actually understanding that you have these emotions in your body that need addressing and they need your time and attention. This is a spiritual way. It is a ritualistic way to actually bypass connecting to your body and healing those repressed wounds in your nervous system. So, when something like that has taken place throughout the ancestorship line for a very long time, and the line has also been through some very significant trauma, that leads to significant fragmentation in the psyche that then passes down through the family line at a nervous system level. And it eventually manifests itself within someone in that generational line that is a sensitive person where it takes full form. So the full fragmentation within the psyche that has occurred through years on years on years from everyone in that generational line eventually kind of manifests itself in the scapegoat of the family or in the black sheep of the family who just happens to be the more sensitive person. And then it comes through in a very intensified way that it can actually seem like there is another human or another energy or a demon possessing the person, when in reality, that's not actually what it is. It's just a very, very severe fragmentation that is literally taking on a whole new biological wiring, and it can speak in different languages. It can speak in different tones. It can literally alter the physical body to like do things that normal bodies can't do. I mean, the mind is so powerful. And if any of you have actually seen the movie Split, this is a great example of how when fragmentation takes place in the psyche, you can have different personalities or different alters that take over. And with every single alter, there's a completely new wiring of your brain and even your biology. And in that movie, Split, the final alter that he changed into was called the Beast. And his whole wiring shifted to the point where he basically became a supernatural creature, but it was all through fragmentation within the psyche. It had nothing to do with like a possession, had nothing to do with anything else, like him not being human. It was psychological. And our minds are very powerful. And when we have that level of severe fragmentation and trauma in our system, we can do things that most people don't even understand that we can do, even if we don't understand how we're doing it or why we're doing it. And once again, with the example of splits, a lot of the times people can be unconscious when they enter into those fragments of their psyche. So, a lot of times when we're looking at possession in modern times, that's actually the root of what possession is. It is very, very unlikely that it's actually a demon. I don't even like it's never really a demon inside of the body of the person. The demonic realm has no need or no reason to enter into someone's body to cause them to act or behave in that way. The demonic realm has a certain energetic resonance that causes trauma to come up to the surface that then needs to be faced and worked with. That can stimulate definitely someone's trauma sort of acting out in a pretty intense way where it can look like they're possessed, but it really has nothing to do with a demon being in their body. It's more of the fragmentation that was already existing inside of them that's now coming out in a very intensified manner. All right, continuing on.
Make us not think about the spiritual world at all and just become obsessed with this world, the comforts and pleasures therein. And so there are many lesser levels of possession that we all have to deal with. And what St. Silouan says is this. He says, if you love your enemies, this is a sign that grace is within you. But if you hate your enemies, it's a sign that a demon is within you instead.
And I would say if you have enemies, then something's already off. And that's a reflection of some stuff that needs to be worked on, because there's no such thing as an enemy when we're all one and we're all connected to the source consciousness. So inherently, if I did have an enemy, then I probably would want to be angry at my enemy. That it just kind of is contradictory in nature. If I have an enemy, like a true enemy, then why would I want to be friends or friendly with my enemy if it's not going to serve my purpose of me overcoming my enemy? Right? So here, I have an enemy. Now I need to love my enemy. I get the concept of it, but the reality is, the true reality is, there's no enemies. No one has enemies. We're all one and we're all learning how to evolve together. And people that trigger you or, act as catalysts in your life, there's a reason why they're in your life and they're showing you certain reflections of yourself that are important to be with. Okay. I just wanted to say that.
Well, there's a certain level of possession. So possession really goes in different stages. But this is why the Orthodox baptismal service begins with an exorcism. The very first thing we do is we stand in the back of the church and the priest makes the sign of the cross and breathes on the candidates and then does 3 prayers of exorcism. St. Diadocos of Photikis says that what's happening in these prayers is that the nature of man is being restored. He says that before one is made a Christian, the demons and evil work from within the heart, and grace works from the outside, as if knocking on the door. But after baptism, and especially after these prayers, everything is reversed. Now grace naturally works from within, and the demons are the ones trying to attack from the outside. This is often why people after baptism experience much more difficult and violent demonic attacks on their spiritual life, as the demons are now trying to reclaim their territory. And this is exactly why Christ gives us an example after baptism of going into the desert to do what? To do battle with Satan.
Yeah, so he's saying that after baptism, that's when people are getting more so attacked by demons, when in reality, no, the act of doing a ritual service of baptizing and cleansing yourself and purifying your body so that you're not having to face your sins or process your trauma. Let's translate sins to trauma and repressed emotions. It's a natural response that when we're trying to spiritually bypass in that way, it's only going to aggravate our system and bring up all of these wounded parts of us that are now being demonized and are really needing our attention so that we can nurture them and be with them and integrate them by feeling them and accepting them and being willing to kind of take that break to slow down to process those things. So when we use a ritual like baptism to try to just push it away and give it to Christ, and then we have to view these parts of us as Satan, and now we need to fight against Satan because this is the holy fight. This is a recipe for disaster for anyone that is truly trying to heal their system. Okay? That's the reason. Oh God. And I know a lot of you are going to resonate with this because you've been through this. I've been through it too. I've experienced it. We are moving into a new collective consciousness where this does not have to keep happening, where people can actually learn about what's truly going on. So you don't have to be a victim of religious trauma anymore. Okay. We can start really understanding what's happening and we can start processing it in a healthy way. And if you know someone that needs to hear this, please copy and paste the link of this video and send it to that person. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel because that's going to further connect you in. All right, let's continue.
So we know that the demons are going to fight against us. So every Orthodox Christian, if you've been brought into the church, has experienced an exorcism on themselves. But you do get cases. You do get cases where exorcisms are done on people or places in which it's a much deeper, higher level of possession. And I will tell you, I haven't done an exorcism like that with a person, but I have been part of exorcisms of places that were absolutely covered with demonic energy, and the experience is utterly life-changing. The most extreme case that I was a part of, I won't give any details of the place, but I will say that this was out in a more deserted area, and it was a series of buildings. And it just so happened that there had been stories in this area for many, many years of people seeing and hearing things that sounded, ghostly or something like that, and sounded demonic. And the particular year that I was there, the activity increased exponentially. I actually wasn't a priest yet, but uh, we did call in a priest and asked him to look at this area. And he consulted with some people who were more familiar with exorcisms. And after hearing all the stories, he decided that we were going to do the exorcism service of the church, which is just some prayers of St. Basil and St. John Chrysostom, and do them in every single building of this area. I will tell you that before he came, being outside at night alone was terrifying. I myself experienced seeing someone in a distance staring at me, and as I walked closer, they completely disappeared. And I heard behind me footsteps when I was walking outside. And I will tell you that they were in the middle of the night, as clear as could be, the sound of footsteps right behind me. And then you turn around and you see nothing there. Very few things have taught me how to pray the Jesus prayer like that night. That was a terrifying night. And everyone who was there was experiencing things like this, hearing voices and other such things. What was incredible was, while that was terrifying, we saw the power of Christ, and we saw how much Christ has absolute power over the invisible world. What happened was we did the exorcism prayers for hours. It took hours to go from building to building and do them in every single one. But the next day we had an interesting situation. The night after these exorcism services, some of us were out at night, and we noticed there was a palpable difference. And some people may think this was simply psychological, but I'll tell you it wasn't. Being outside felt peaceful. You wanted to sleep outside under the stars. It just felt completely different. And of course, even we were, wondering, is this just psychological? It certainly didn't feel psychological. It felt like this was an otherworldly peace that had entered this area. And then the next morning, something really fascinating happened. Even though this was kind of a secluded area out in the wilderness, we never considered the fact that we rarely ever saw animals around that area. But the morning after the exorcisms, it was like a Disney movie.
Yeah. So to just touch on some of that, a lot of this is absolutely psychological, and it is a reflection of how powerful the nervous system is and how energetic resonance happens. So before they went through and did all the different prayers with all the different buildings and whatnot, they were highly afraid because they thought that there was a demonic presence. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a demonic presence. From the sounds of it, it sounds like there absolutely was a strong, dense, death like demonic energy, which once again does not mean it's a bad thing or an evil thing. It's actually an energy that's existing in that space that is drawing in certain people to it that are actually needing to experience that death cycle, that dissolving, that dissolution, that deconstruction of the false self. So it sounds like there definitely was that energy that's present. And obviously, him and everyone else involved is afraid of the demonic. They're afraid of Satan. So they're approaching it already from this nervous system resonance of fear and anxiety. And they're seeing things that are projecting from their unconscious into the world around them that are actually manifesting these experiences that could often be paranormal experiences. That in itself creates an energetic resonance where you're just going to keep manifesting things that are once again showing you reflections of your own unconscious and all the different stuff that you've got buried there that are now projecting into the environment around you to get you to feel the emotions that are truly in the system that need to be faced. Now, of course, when you're in that state and you're in that deep aspect of the shadow, it is going to project in a scarier way. You're going to be resonating at that frequency, which is not a bad thing, but it's how you're going to better do that shadow work and connect with the real emotions that are behind it. Now, of course, they're approaching it from a religious lens. So they think that it's demonic. So they have to get rid of it and they have to change the energy. So as a group, they do all these different prayers. They try to banish the darkness. They try to bring in the Christ consciousness, the light. And then that obviously has spiritual effects, it has psychological effects, and it has nervous system effects in regards to resonance. So you take a group of people and you put together this big intention of we're taking away the shadow, we're banishing the darkness, and we're only going to move into this light space that is connected to Christ. And the next thing you know, everyone's feeling a little bit better. Everyone's not really having to face their shadow as deeply as they were before. And now their energetic resonance at a nervous system level has shifted, and they're now perceiving different things that are reflecting this more positive state of being. So they're seeing more animals, they're seeing more wildlife, they're able to feel safer in the environment and look at the stars. So none of this is because there was an evil energy and then the energy of Christ came through to banish that evil energy. It's simply a balance. So the reason why these people, including him, was even drawn to this place in the first place is because there was an energetic resonance where he had to go there, be in that environment because there was shadow work that was being presented by even being there and everyone else involved. The shadow is what drew them there in the first place to be able to do some of that work, feel through some of those feelings like the fear, the anxiety, the scariness of all of it. And then, the goal is to find acceptance with that and then release it. But obviously, with this approach, they gather together and they try to change the energy as a collective. Well, the thing is like that can happen because our minds are very powerful and our beings are very powerful as humans, and our intention can absolutely shift things. But that doesn't mean that that was the healthiest thing to shift. Doesn't mean that that was what the authentic self naturally wanted to experience. That was something that they felt they needed to change because of the belief system they're operating by. And I guarantee you that the energy of those locations probably resorted back to its natural energetic resonance, which probably carries that denser, heavier energy once they eventually left after a period of time. Okay. This is where I'm going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. I have to go to the market before it closes. Our video is already at 30 minutes anyway. So I enjoyed going over this with you. If you want me to continue doing this type of content, I enjoyed doing it. This was very fascinating to me. If you want me to continue on this video specifically, we can absolutely do that. I'm going to even screenshot it right now so I can save it just to see where we're at. So let me know in the comment section if this was something that you enjoyed. Let me know if you want me to do more of this type of content because it kind of changes things up a little bit. And I really do enjoy making videos like this and doing commentating because I think it can help a lot of people understand what's actually going on here. So yeah, drop in the comment section. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. I'm posting all the time. Check out all my different services in the description below. I have my Patreon that is literally so much exclusive content on there. An entire revamped magic training course for any of you that are getting into occultism, that are wanting to study trauma, that are wanting to understand how to regulate the nervous system, ritualistic practices, all things self-development, including the occult aspects of all of it, is on the Patreon. Check it out. Then the second link is where you can book mentorships and calls with me. Third link is a LUCIFERS Foundation course. Fourth link is my YouTube memberships. And the fifth link is the book recommendations that I have for you. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day or night, wherever you are. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.